I think we have everybody in set downtown. Are we set to go, gentlemen?
We are.
There we go. We're going to leave this up for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to go on to our regular programming. We will tape this entire debate and go from there, but we are happy to see all the candidates in place right now. Let me turn off this mic, go to my other mic. Dan Fyan is there.
Good
Aaron
morning.
Wojciechowski is there. And everybody ready? Let's get a thumbs up. There we go. Gentlemen, first of all, we are asking you to tell us a little about yourselves. I'm not sure who won the toss beforehand. I see Dan is up first here in the queue box on the Zoom room. So we will go to him first, but you have a few minutes here, Dan, to tell us about yourself.
Good morning, Bob, and thank you to the chamber and thank you to you for hosting this morning. Look forward to participating in this with my opponent. I am State Senator Dan Fine. I'm wrapping up my first term in the State Senate after spending 30 years in the printing business. I've lived in the district for a little over 30 years right now. This is the place that I met my wife. Met my wife in the JCs, a community service organization. We've raised a family. We've been married for 26 years. Our son has recently graduated from college and is employed as a financial examiner in the insurance business. My daughter is a senior at UW-Madison and going for elementary education and will be graduating this upcoming May and hopes to be a third or fourth grade teacher somewhere in Wisconsin. So very proud of my family and very proud of everything they've done. So like I said, worked in the printing business for 30 years in the Fond du Lac area, which is the dead center of the district. I'd like to thank my constituents for the opportunity to serve as their state senator. It has truly been an honor. I've learned a lot in my first term over the last 4 years. I've gotten 21 bills signed into law with bipartisan support. In fact, over 90% of the laws passed in Madison are done with bipartisan support, sometimes not always the easiest task. I've also supported 2 budgets that invested records amounts in education, transportation, workforce, and economic development, and at the same time, cutting your taxes, something I'm very proud of as well. In fact, the last budget secured funding for Highway 23. For those in the southern part of the district, Highway 23 has been a topic for the last 25 to 40 years, and we're finally getting that completed as a safety upgrade and an economic upgrade to this corridor. Since taking office, we've budgeted responsibly and been able to end the current budget or current fiscal year with a surplus and have saved in our rainy day fund over $760 million to overcome tough situations like COVID, which may have to be tapped into in the next budget. Because of responsible budgeting, Wisconsin will be in a much better position than many other states in our region. I believe that I have served the district well, and I feel that there is more to do to keep Wisconsin moving in the right direction. After strong consideration with my family, I have decided to run for re-election, and I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd or before, and early absentee voting ends at the end of the day, Friday. So make sure you get out there and vote, and I'd love to have your support, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dan. We are going to move on to the challenger now. Aaron Wojciechowski, we'll ask you to introduce yourself to the listeners here on the Zoom, in addition to that WOSH.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Bob. Thank you, John, and the Chamber for hosting this important forum for voters to be more informed with the election just right around the corner. My name is Aaron Wojciechowski, and I know it's a mouthful, so usually I just tell folks to say, "Where's your house key?" is the best way to remember it. But I am, the Democratic challenger for the Wisconsin State Senate District 18. And, I'm incredibly proud to be here representing the district. I live in the Oshkosh area. I'm a former alumni from UW-Oshkosh, where I got degrees in political science and economics. I'm an educator through the Oshkosh Area School District. And for the last 4 years, I had the honor of representing District 16 on the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors. And that was really where I got my start in government, learning, about the relationship between local and state and how we work together. And it wasn't until the end of, my local government term that I really started thinking about, what we need in our state government. I didn't really, I had no plan to run for office at the state level. I was just about to graduate from college and was kind of looking at what was next in my life. And then we had the lame duck session come around. And after the results of that vote, that was what got me started thinking that we needed some different leadership in the state legislature. So, I'm here to talk about the issues. I encourage people to vote for myself. I come from a working family that taught me the values of hard work, integrity, and making a positive difference wherever I went. And those are the values that I'm going to bring to the state legislature, hopefully working together with Republicans, Democrats, independents, making sure that we have a legislature that represents the people, that's working on their behalf, and tackling the challenges that are facing us right now. We need a plan to tackle COVID as soon as we get back into session, and we need someone who is willing to make those tough decisions, make some concessions, work together to get our state moving back forward, get our economy back afloating, and making sure that we're doing everything we can to get people the resources they need while still protecting the services that benefit everyone. So I'm incredibly proud to be here. Look forward to having this discussion, and thank you, Senator Fine, for being here today as well.
Thank you, Aaron. We are going to go to our questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. After the first candidate's response, the other will have 2 minutes to respond. We'll hope to get about 10 or 12 questions in over the next 45, 50 minutes before we have our closing statements. I will say again that these are not my questions. They are not John Casper's questions. We went out and surveyed our membership in the Chamber of Commerce to determine exactly what was on people's mind. So let's start here. What is the biggest problem facing the state of Wisconsin right now? What policies would you advocate to solve them? You have 2 minutes, and we'll start with Dan Fine, the incumbent.
Thank you, Bob. One of the biggest problems right now, obviously, is the effects of COVID on our economy and how they're affecting all the citizens of the state of Wisconsin. COVID has affected a lot of people that have tested positive. Some families have been very, very much affected, and our hearts go out to them. But the reality of the fact is, right now, we have a lot of businesses out there that are very much struggling. I talk to business owners every day, and there's a lot of them that are wondering if they will be able to make it through the end of this year, much less move forward in the next year. So one of the things that we should take note of is during this entire pandemic, the governor has been given $2.2 billion through the CARES Act to use to fight COVID. And he's put it into areas. Some have been very effective, some he have not. He's used it, but he has not used all of it yet. He hasn't even, there's still 130 some million dollars sitting there that can be used to help some of these businesses that are truly struggling, to help with testing capabilities, whatever it might be. The feds keep putting more money into testing capabilities as well. So I think we need to look to our governor. He did not need any legislative approval to use any of that money. Also, back when we went in shortly after COVID started into session to take up
30
COVID
seconds.
related stuff, very good. He was given the authority to spend an extra $75 million. All he had to do was come to the Joint Finance Committee and ask for that. And he has not done that to date. So he has not worked with the legislator 1 minute. He has never called Leader Fitzgerald and asked for our help on this. So I think that's going to be one of the big issues moving forward, how we deal with that, but how we deal with the economy moving forward in COVID.
All right. The challenger, Aaron, has his response to what is the biggest problem facing the state right now, and what policies would you advocate to solve them? Aaron?
Thank you. So as Senator Fine said, COVID obviously is the number one issue, not just on businesses' minds, but individuals, families, teachers, everyone has been affected by it one way or another. And one thing we need to do is, I think we do need the legislature back to be having these discussions with the governor. I know he has his own powers, but this is an issue that the governor himself cannot take on alone. It is one that we all need to be working on together. And, it is disingenuous to say that this is just his burden to take on. He did send a letter to Republican leadership asking for them to come meet at the table, come with ideas about how we can, move our state forward. And that was not answered. I think that we need a legislature that is working on behalf of the people right now, and the thing is, if people aren't happy with the way the governor is working, that's the role of the legislature to come in and do something or make him, work in the way that they want him to. We are a shared governance where, this isn't the responsibility of just the governor. But, he has done quite a bit, and, about $200 million in small business grants that have gone out into various parts of Wisconsin. And for many businesses, that is the lifeline that they need. But we also recognize that that is not enough to get us through this pandemic, one that we thought would be, short, but it is not. And we are getting close to the end of the year, and it does not look like there is any end in sight. So we need to get serious about what
30
we're going to.
seconds.
And I think one of the big things we need the legislature to reconvene is to talk about another relief package. The last one was passed, I believe, back in March, about 6 months ago. And I don't think we had planned that was going to last us through this long. We need the legislature back to start looking at another relief bill for businesses, to get our schools back in order, to get us through this pandemic.
Thank you. The next question will go to Aaron, and then Dan will have his response. But Governor Evers' administration has issued emergency orders in an attempt to flatten the spread of COVID-19, including a safer at home order, and recently in Order 3 that restricts occupancy in bars and restaurants and stores to 25%. The Supreme Court ruled the governor's safer at home order was unlawful, and right now challenge is going on to Order number 3. Here's the question. It appears that Governor Evers and the state leadership are not working together. As our state representative, what would you do to ensure that the parties are working together to curb the spread of COVID-19? Aaron, you're up first. You have 2 minutes.
Sure. Well, we need to be in session to actually start talking to other legislators. We can't be talking to them, from our own homes with so many. We need to be in the same room having these discussions, talking about how we're going to move our state forward. We can't rely on, the judiciary to, get us through this issue. And that seems to be the approach of the majority in the legislature, is to really not do anything and let the Supreme Court decide what they're going to do. The governor has put in mandates, his emergency orders, and I don't think anyone takes pleasure in making these sweeping changes. But the truth is, we need to do something if we're going to tackle COVID. We can't just sit on our hands and do nothing, because if we do that, we're going to be continuing to see these challenges going on. We're going to see our economy not working the way we want it to. We're not going to see kids getting back into school or businesses reopening. We need to get back together, start working together, start passing some laws. I think we passed the original relief bill, and I think that was a good bipartisan measure. But I think we need to reconvene to start talking about a new one that addresses a lot of these issues that we see. Specifically, how are we going to keep these businesses going during this time? It's clear we're probably going to be going into the next year, into this COVID pandemic. And there are other policies that we need to be looking at that I think there are bipartisan support, like supporting the Medicaid expansion, looking at new sources of revenue, like creating a completely new industry by legalizing marijuana. There are things we can do that we need to at least be talking about. We might not agree on these policies.
30 seconds.
Go forward with them, but we need to at least be in session talking about them, because we might, be surprised at the bipartisanship that we find once we actually get back into session and start talking about it.
Dan, I think you heard the setup here, but I'll go back to the question itself. It appears that Governor Evers and state lawmakers are not working together. As our representative, what would you do to ensure that the parties are working together to curb the spread of COVID-19? You have 2 minutes.
First and foremost, the legislator cannot sit in a room and end the COVID by passing some legislation. COVID is a virus. It is something that is real. It's going to take personal responsibility and common sense of every citizen and business in the state of Wisconsin to get this thing under control. And I think for the most part, most people are doing a good job at it. A lot of businesses are doing a very good job at it. So I think that's a big part of it. As far as relief goes, he mentioned that passing a second round of relief. I think the federal government needs to step up and do something on that level as well. I think they need to get together and put some different package of PPP together that helped out a lot of businesses very early on, but it's got to go to the businesses that can show they've been affected by this and have a loss. So I think that's a big part of it. The one he mentioned that the governor sent a letter to the leaders of the legislature. Sending letters ain't the way to get this done. We need to sit down in the same room with the governor and have a discussion. The problem with that is you don't know if you're going to be recorded or not, and you don't know if you can have open discussions and just talk about some things. And the governor has not been willing to talk with the leadership of the legislature. Speaker Voss, Leader Fitzgerald, they literally have talked on the phone only a couple times
30
since the
seconds.
beginning of this pandemic. They need to be able to sit down in a room, have serious discussions about how the state of Wisconsin can help. And at the end of the day, it's a virus. It's going to run its course, but we need to manage how the state responds to certain areas of this.
Gentlemen, take a half-minute break here. I'm going to send our regular programming into session here on News Talk Radio 1490 WOSH. You'll hear this debate in its entirety before Election Day, but we're going to move on to our regularly scheduled programming. I want to thank everybody for helping out here at the radio station. Make sure we could do this morning. And now we are set to go again. I want to move on to the next question. This would be for, I believe, Dan this time around. Do you support lowering the state's individual income tax and corporate income tax rates? Is Wisconsin's tax burden too high, too low, or just right? What taxes would you like to raise? Which ones would you like to have lower if possible?
Very good. Thank you for the question. The one thing I'm very proud of in the budgets that we've passed is we have lowered income taxes and we have lowered taxes and we have eliminated taxes. If you'll remember back to a couple of years ago on your property tax bill, every year came a state portion of your property tax, was called the forestry mill tax. That is now gone. We eliminated that. The state does not charge you anything on your property taxes anymore. We've also gotten rid of the alternative minimum tax. So we've got rid of, just eliminated 2 taxes. That hardly ever happens. I have a brother that lives in Illinois and their income tax is still lower than Wisconsin's. So I'd love to see us get to the point where we're at least competitive with Illinois with income tax, if not lower. There's no reason we should be higher than the state of Illinois, who is in such financial trouble that their income tax is still lower than ours. I think the corporate tax is something that always needs to be looked at to make sure we're offering a fair tax rate that encourages growth right here in the state of Wisconsin and brings in investment from out of state into Wisconsin due to favorable tax rates and also a great workforce that we have here in Wisconsin. One thing we know about Wisconsin, we have a great workforce. They work hard, great working class people, put in a good day's work, and you can make a good living doing it too. And it's a great place to do business, great place to do manufacturing. And we're also shifting our environment to all different kinds of things as well. So I think we need to focus on making sure we have a tax rate that's competitive and even a little lower than everywhere else so people want to come to Wisconsin and live.
Aaron, I'll pose a question to you. Do you support lowering the state's individual income tax and corporate income tax rates? Is Wisconsin's tax burden too high, too low, or just right? And what taxes do you would you like to raise, or which ones would you like to lower?
Well, thank you for that question. And my goal is to never want to raise taxes. I don't think anyone wants to go out of their way to raise taxes. I think we should always be looking to lower them and cut spending where we can. But the conversation that you have to have along with that is, if we're going to lower taxes, where are we going to make changes elsewhere? We cut taxes, we lower our revenue. We need to find either alternative sources of revenue, or we're going to need to cut government programs and services. And, a lot of the services that we provide as a state government help a lot of people and are very important. And, this is not a discussion that we can just have like this. It's one that we need to have, in session. It's one that we need to look very closely at, have experts on, where we need to make those changes. I've advocated for creating new programs, supporting policies that would increase our overall revenue so we don't have to cut taxes. Because the real question is, once we get to budget time, it's almost sure that we're going to have a hole in the state budget, and that we're going to need to find some way to fill that in due to COVID. I've mentioned many different policies that we can do to increase our revenue, fill that budget shortfall, such as, creating new markets, supporting our businesses, increasing healthcare coverage and accessibility, because it's not just low taxes that attract people to our state. It's good healthcare, good schools, good infrastructure. And as a state that has an older population, we're going to need to start attracting younger people to our state to make sure that our economy is working. COVID has done this, but it
30
won't matter if
seconds.
we don't have a workforce to begin with. So yes, if in the legislature, my hope is to lower taxes and find alternative sources of revenue so that we don't have to cut existing programs and services. Of course, if there are programs that aren't working as intended, we'll look at that and see where we can make changes. But the hope is to keep taxes lower and increase our revenue through alternative sources.
Thank you. This question will start with Aaron, and it's along the same lines. It's about taxes. There's been a lot of conversation about dark stores, but do you support or oppose the so-called dark store legislation that gives assessors the authority to increase property taxes on business? Aaron, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think we need to get rid of that loophole, and there was an opportunity to get rid of that in the last budget, but it was taken out in the Senate. And this is something that local governments support. They're the ones who are directly dealing with the negative effects. I believe 2019, Oshkosh, the city of Oshkosh lost almost $2 million due to lawsuits, tied in with this dark store loophole. And what that ends up doing is it puts the tax burden on local governments and local property owners. I think this is something that, we should get rid of. Other states have done it. We have local referendums all over the state that are asking to get rid of this. And I think this is an opportunity where we can work with local governments and really let them lead on this issue. And it's clear that they want to get rid of it because the positive benefits will, benefit them, but then it will also trickle down or trickle up to the state level. So yes, I do support getting rid of the dark store loophole tax.
I will pose a question now to the incumbent, Dan. Dark stores. We've heard a lot about that. Do you support or oppose the so-called dark store legislation that gives assessors the authority to increase property taxes on businesses? Your feelings on that?
I'll get to that in 1 second. First, I want to go back to, he says he wants to cut taxes, but since I've been there, every member of his party has always voted no on every tax cut possible. And the governor of his party has vetoed the tax cuts that were in the last budget. So I wonder how he's going to get that done if every member of the Democratic caucus has continually voted no on cutting taxes here in the state of Wisconsin. On the dark store, it's called a loophole. I think the way we need to approach it is we need to make sure assessors are doing their job fair and equitably so that every property business is being treated the same way. What we found when you do a lot of deep dive into it, and I've looked into this quite a bit, especially because the Oshkosh area has been affected by something like this. So I think we need to look into it to make sure that every assessment is done in a fair and proper way, and that it's being carried out the same way throughout the entire state. So if you own a business, let's say in Oshkosh, and then you own it in same type of business in Fond du Lac, another branch, that they should be taxed virtually the same based upon where they are and then the value of that property. So I think we need to make sure that it's fair, equitable, and being done in a proper way, and that all assessors abide by the same guidelines, because not every assessor assesses the whole state. So they assess a certain area or something. So I want to make sure that it's being done fair and equitable.
Dan, we will pose you.
Can I respond quickly, please?
Yes, we'll let you have 1 minute.
Just take a second. What I would say is you can look at my record being on the county board. It's nonpartisan government. We didn't get caught up in the politics of all that. I supported 4 budgets that lowered the overall property tax by a very small amount. But, the fact that we were able to lower it each year, I think is an accomplishment. And, I guess I'd say that, my decisions aren't bound by the party that I'm running for. They're my own individual decisions. I was one of the few county board supervisors, I think 1 of 5, who voted against raising their own pay. Even though I was going to be reelected and would have gotten that new pay, I voted against it. This isn't about what party I'm at. I'm going to fight for what's best for the 18th district. So let my record show that as a local government person, that I did spend our taxpayer dollars wisely and tried to do the best we could with them.
All right. This question is going to go to Dan. We're going to moving on to legal reform. The question, Wisconsin communities, Madison and Kenosha, have experienced the destruction caused by peaceful social injustice protest, resulting in a call for defunding law enforcement. We'll start with Dan Fyan here. Do you support this? And you have 2 minutes to tell us how you feel.
Defunding law enforcement should never, ever be something that we talk about. First and foremost, thank you to all the men and women who wear the badge out there. I'm very happy to have the endorsement of all 3 sheriffs within this district, Sheriff Schmidt of Dodge County, Sheriff Waldschmidt of Fond du Lac County, and Sheriff John Mott of Winnebago County. So I'm happy to have their support. I have the support of a lot of the men and women who wear the badge as well. Going back to Kenosha and Madison, those were not peaceful protests. I had a fellow colleague in Madison who got beat up just going out and taking a picture. I consider this person a friend. He's a Democratic colleague. We get along very, very well. So I reached out to him, happy to see he's doing better. But these aren't peaceful protests. There are peaceful protests. Don't get me wrong. You can protest peacefully, but once you start looting and destroying stuff, you have crossed a line. And I just want to point out that my opponent has called defunding the police a legitimate course of action. And I think that that can never be a legitimate course of action. We need to make sure that they always have the resources possible to do the best job possible. I recently had the pleasure of being invited by Sheriff Waldschmidt of Fond du Lac County to go through one of their training simulator programs that trains officers in this area and the Fond du Lac Sheriff's Department on de-escalation. When they get into a situation, how can they de-escalate and how can they bring this to a conclusion so they don't have to use force? So I just want to make sure that our officers out there have the support, and I do support them 100% every day, and I will work with them, and I always reach out to them whenever there's proposals at the state legislature level to see how it affects them and to see how it affects the community as well.
Time. Aaron, we'll get your response to this. Wisconsin communities, including Madison and Kenosha, have experienced the destruction caused by peaceful social injustice protests, resulting in a call for now defunding of law enforcement. Your feelings about that?
Sure. Thank you for that question. So obviously we need to denounce, any type of, dangerous actions like that, whereas looting, rioting, destroying property, that is not just wrong, but it's counterproductive to the message that we're trying to convey. That is, I support the police. I in no way want to defund the police, as some would put it, in the way that, we would defund them to the point where they can't even operate. That's just ludicrous. And what I have said is that you can support our law enforcement while still asking for more transparency and accountability, not just in their practices and their actions, but also their budgets. I served on the county board for 4 years, and every year we would have to, approve the budget as a whole. But when we went through, one of the largest items on that was the sheriff's budget. And I will tell you, all 4 years I did vote in favor and supported it. But I didn't blindly support a budget because it was worth millions and millions of dollars. We went through line by line to make sure that every dollar was being spent in a smart way. We engaged with the sheriff to make sure that, why was that money going there? Why was there such a big increase? We had those discussions and we found out that they were being used in the correct way. My approach is that we need to take a look at how we fund our law enforcement. Maybe we'll find that they do in fact have too much money. Maybe they're just right, or maybe that they do need more funding because they've taken on a significant, responsibility in dealing with mental health issues, other parts of their job that,
30 seconds.
Part of that. We need to look at that. We need to get in session. The governor's called a special session to address law enforcement reform, and the Republicans refused to show up, even though it was supported by the Wisconsin Professional Police Association. They released their blueprint for change, which includes many reforms to practices and policies at the state and local level. I support many of those, and I think we need to have a discussion about those.
We're going to move on to another subject. This involves the environment and energy. Again, the questions come from members of the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. Aaron, your turn. Do you oppose global warming legislation that would raise electric rates in Wisconsin and saddle manufacturers with higher costs? Your feelings on that?
So I think this is one of those, issues where we need to be able to bring in all stakeholders, business leaders, business owners, environmental experts, to find out what solution works best for Wisconsin. The 18th district specifically is home to Lake Winnebago, the largest lake in Wisconsin. And I think whoever the representative is should be taking climate change, taking sustainability serious, and ensuring that, future generations have access to clean water, to, the recreational parts that come with that lake and different parts of our environment. My hope is we don't have to raise taxes or do these burdens on businesses, but we need to make sure that we're not polluting our environment, whether it's through, agriculture pollution runoff, whether it's through businesses polluting the air. We need to work with them, but we also need to, be innovative. We could be a state that is leading on green and sustainable technology, whether it's solar or wind technology. There are areas that we need to improve on. And I think it's actually, a good opportunity to create a new industry, a better industry in Wisconsin, while ensuring that we're keeping our environment and, our water streams and everything else clean.
Dan, we'll get your response as we continue on here. Let me state the question again. Do you oppose global warming legislation that would raise electric rates in the state and saddle manufacturers with higher costs? Your response?
Yes, thanks for the question as well. The one thing I would say is I do oppose something that would raise electric rates in Wisconsin. Electric rates are quite high here in the state of Wisconsin. The one thing I will say though is when the electric utilities are looking for buying more energy, I have talked with a lot of them recently because I serve on the Housing and Utilities Committee. I serve as vice chair of that committee. So I've met with a lot of utility companies, and when they're pricing out new forms of energy, it's going to those renewable ones. It's going to solar. It is going to some of those wind farms there, wind areas. If you look in the 18th Senate District, we have a lot of wind technology. Up on the east side of Lake Winnebago, up in that area, there's a lot of windmills. If you look across Oshkosh on a Lake Winnebago from Oshkosh on a clear day, you can see a lot of windmills over on the east side. And then down in the southern part of the district, the Oakfield area, Byron area, there's a lot of wind as well. So this is one of the largest wind producing districts in the state. It brings a lot of dollars into this part of the area. And I think the market will bear what is the best type of energy. And also when it comes to other environmental concerns, nobody wants to pollute. There's no business out there that's going, I'm going to purposely pollute or do anything. No farmer wants to pollute. They're all doing very good job out there.
30 seconds.
So I think we need to take into account that businesses are being very responsible in how they do business. We all want clean water. We all want a great environment for us and for our future.
We're going to move on to labor and workforce issues. Again, these are questions that are coming in from the members of the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. We will start with Dan this time around as we talk a little about right to work. Do you support maintaining Wisconsin's right to work law? You have 2 minutes.
I do support that. And I don't have anything against any unions out there. I think right to work is a good thing to have in place. If you go work for a place and they have a union, if that union provides value to you, you should join it. If it doesn't provide any value, you should not be forced to join it. I know many good unions within the 18th Senate District who provide a great value to their employees. They provide training. They provide a lot of that other type of stuff. But training is the biggest thing that a lot of these unions, safety trainings, equipment trainings, things like that. And I think those are the reasons people join those unions, is they see a value in it. That's just like any business. If you see a value in something, you're going to go back. Well, if you're a union and you have no value to your member, why would you put your money into that union? Same as, why you should put your money into it. If you provide value, you will get value in return. So I think that's the way we approach right to work. And I do support the way it is right now in the state of Wisconsin. And I would look to continue that moving forward to support our business.
Aaron, your opportunity here. Again, do you support Wisconsin's right to work law? Your feelings about that?
No, I think we need to get rid of it. It's something that has decimated unions. And, my mentality with all of that has always been, if you want to be a part of a union, you should have that opportunity. If you don't, that's fine, but you shouldn't be receiving the benefits that unions fight for if you're not paying for those union dues. And right to work is something that has allowed that to happen. And what happens is, unions can no longer sustain themselves when memberships are leaving, but still reaping the benefits of, their actions. We should always be putting workers first, because these are the people who are keeping these businesses alive, who are, spending money in our community, who are, making our economy profitable. We need to be able to support our workers and, say that they have the right to collectively bargain. They have the ability to come together and, organize and advocate for better wages, better benefits, a better working environment. And I think, of all times, this is one of the greatest times that we need those, protections. We need those resources for unions, for workers, especially as we have that back and forth between, wanting to work, but COVID safety measures. We want to make sure that employers have the route to keep their businesses accountable, and vice versa, that businesses can keep their employees accountable during these, challenging times. So, I do support getting rid of it. I think we need to strengthen our
30
unions.
seconds.
As we've seen over history, that, the work that they've done has gotten us a lot of the benefits that we have today, and a lot of the, good working environments that we have today.
I want to stay with labor and the workforce issue. We'll go back to you, Aaron. You'll be up first on this particular question. Do you oppose enactment of a new prevailing wage law? Again, let me state the question. Do you oppose enactment of a new prevailing wage law here in the state?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, no problem. It's again, do you oppose the enactment of a new prevailing wage law?
No, I don't oppose it. I think what we need is fair wages. We need people to be able to, advocate for those fair wages in the workplace. It's, I believe, a basic right of workers to be able to have that ability to fight for better wages, better working environment, better benefits in the workplace, regardless of if they're a public or a private employee. During these times, people are barely, getting by, struggling with the wages that they have. And, we need the resources, every resource at our disposal for workers to get through this.
Dan, I'll ask you the question. Do you oppose enactment of a new prevailing wage law? Please discuss. You have 2 minutes.
I do oppose that. I did know someone at one time who worked on projects when we did have prevailing wage. One day they were working on a private project, making 18 to 20 bucks an hour. Then the next day they'd be called over to work on that project in a public building, and they'd be making $30 an hour. Well, why is that? Because the market should bear what that person makes, not an arbitrary number. Because you're working on a certain project, you should get paid more because it's a public project. That only drives our taxes up, makes schools more expensive, makes roads more expensive. And if you want to try and hold the line on taxes, you got to let the market bear what the market will bear. And if someone's willing to do that job for $25 an hour, why should we pay them $40 an hour when they go work on a public project? I think our wages in that marketplace are at a very good place. So I don't think prevailing wage needs to be something that we have in place or put back in place to drive up the cost of public projects. For example, schools is the biggest one that we can come up with. It drives those costs up a lot. And, school districts need every penny they can get. So we need to make sure that we're not wasting it on prevailing wage and things like that. These people are making a decent wage already.
About 40 minutes into this debate, we're getting around to education. And Dan, you'll be first up here. Again, you'll have 2 minutes to discuss this. But is the state of Wisconsin doing all it can and all it should do to provide state tax dollars to support access to education opportunities through the University of Wisconsin system?
I would say yes. I have 2 kids that went to UW-Madison. I have a niece at UW-Milwaukee and a niece at UW-Platteville. So I support the UW system 100%. I also support our technical colleges 100%. They do a great job out there. They are a great economic driver for the state of Wisconsin. And the state of Wisconsin has put in over $6 billion in every budget into the UW system. We put more money into it last time. I think it was about $57 million that we increased the last budget for the UW system, which puts them in a very good place to provide that great quality education. My kids received a great education. My daughter's still there. So I support the UW system 100%. the former president, Ray Cross, him and I worked very, very well together. When they had needs and things, we were able to have a good, open, and honest discussion about keeping the UW system moving in the right direction. The one thing I would say is not every UW school should be providing every program. They got to figure out a way to streamline the programs that they provide so that they specialize in areas. For example, we all don't need to be providing history majors or something like that, but we could have 5 of them that do it very, very well, rather than 13 that do them okay. So I think we need, if you want to go to school for engineering, you're either going to Milwaukee, you're going to Madison, or you're going to Platteville. If you're going for environmental sciences, you're going to UW Stevens Point, maybe Stout. So I think we have schools that specialize in it, and I think we need to focus more on how we can save money that way as well.
Aaron, I'll pose a question to you. You'll have 2 minutes. Is the state of Wisconsin doing all it can and all that it should do to provide state tax dollars to support access to educational opportunities through the University of Wisconsin system? Your feelings?
Sure. Thank you for that question. As a recent grad who just came out of the UW system at UW Oshkosh, I don't think the state is doing everything it can. And one thing that comes to mind is the tuition freeze that was put in place. It sounds great. We're keeping costs, at a low level, but the problem you run into is when we're not actually funding that freeze, we see costs increase in other areas, whether that be housing, supplies, food plans, everything else that goes into, a fuller college experience. And, I do agree that we need to try to streamline where we can, but logistically, that can get tricky when you have people who are going to school, trying to get that fuller experience. Even if you're going for a very specialized field, you still have to get those general classes in. You still need to get that full education. And if we're moving people around and taking out programs like we've seen at UW Stevens Point, who has recently cut a significant amount of majors due to budget cuts, we're gonna see more problems. We're gonna see people leaving the state, going to out-of-state colleges that might be more expensive, but don't offer the full program range that we're proud of usually having. Oshkosh, I'm proud that I went to UW Oshkosh that offers such a wide range of majors, and we are producing people in all different types of fields. But what we need to be doing is supporting the UW system, especially during COVID, when we're going to see probably large budget shortfalls from students not living on campus any longer, students not using the services where they would usually be making money. I think this is a conversation of what do colleges look like? What does their spending look like? How can we reform them during these, COVID times when people are online and not utilizing all the services that they normally do utilize?
Got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions at best. We're going to go back to you, Aaron. I'm going to go back to COVID-19. Do you support providing employers with immunity from COVID-19 related lawsuits unless they knowingly violate a public health order or engage in intentionally reckless conduct? Your feelings about liability?
Yes, I support the question as you stated. We can't have blanket immunity because we don't want workers being taken advantage of during these, stressful times and during when people's health are at risk. We want to make sure that we're incentivizing businesses to be doing safe practices, being able to operate in the same way that they have been, but keeping in mind the health and safety of their employees, their customers, anyone who participates, in that business. We don't want frivolous lawsuits all over the place. That's the last thing we need when businesses are barely staying afloat right now. But we need to make sure that workers have that avenue of accountability if they are indeed being taken advantage of, or if they have a business that's, practicing reckless actions. I think we can all agree that we need to keep these frivolous lawsuits down while protecting workers and also protecting our employees and our employers.
Dan, the question goes to you then. Do you support providing employers with immunity from COVID-19 related lawsuits unless they knowingly violate a public health order or engage in intentionally reckless conduct? Your feelings on that? You as well have 2 minutes.
I do support that bill that's out there. I think it's a good thing because we can never, ever definitively say where someone got COVID. It is a virus. It is not something you can see that you picked it up physically here at this place. So to prove that someone was negligent and received it at a certain business is going to be almost impossible. So I don't think we should put businesses on the hook and have to worry about something that they may not be responsible for, and they really aren't responsible for. This is a virus. It's going to move about freely as it wants to through our society. It's the protections we take to protect ourselves as well as businesses taking those. I don't think we can prove that you got it at business A or business B or your employer. So no, I support the bill that's out there.
Got time for one more question before your closing arguments, gentlemen. Gasoline taxes and registration fees are not supplying enough revenue to address the state's current and future transportation needs. How does Wisconsin address the shortfall occurring in our transportation budget? We'll get the first answer from Dan Fyan.
First and foremost, when this pandemic hit, the amount of fuel tax revenue plummeted because nobody was driving to work. Nobody was traveling for leisure. It has started to come back up. The amount of travel on the roads is approaching, getting closer to normal, but nowhere near what it is. So a lot of our fuel tax is generated every day of the week. So then the one thing that we know is our transportation fund is funded with fuel tax, registration fees, and a few other fees here and there. And those fees have been a little lower this year. Not the fees, but the collections of them have been a little lower because of the pandemic. It is going to pose some struggles moving forward, whether we backfill that with some state GPR dollars to help out and make sure we continue our projects as they do. We'll probably may have to push back a project or two here and there, but we need to make sure that we have a great infrastructure all around the state, whether it's in our townships, giving them the road aids to help out with those roads, the county aid, road aids, municipal aids, with City of Oshkosh, County of Winnebago, and also keeping those state projects on track because they are major
30
economic
seconds.
drivers and needed for the safety of the citizens of Wisconsin. And we brought some new revenue into it last time, and I think we got to see how that plays out.
All right, before the closing statements, then, Aaron, we'll go to you for your answer in regards to gasoline taxes and registration fees are not supplying enough revenue to address the state's current and future transportation needs. How does Wisconsin address the shortfall occurring currently in our transportation budget?
Sure. So as I said in earlier questions, this is a question of, you either need to raise taxes, which would probably be the gasoline tax, because the registration fees, in my mind, are not a fair way of funding roads. But it's either that or you need to find alternative sources of revenue. And that's really the approach that we need to take. We need to get creative in how we fund fixing our roads, how we keep them, sustainable, how we keep them good quality. One of the things I think we need to do is we need to loosen restrictions on local governments to be able to make those decisions and investments in their communities, because quite frankly, I trust them to make those decisions better than I do state officials. I think they know what's best for their communities and how to fund those projects. But they're being restricted at the state level. And, the other thing to that is creating new industries, investing in new industries, and trying to get rid of those regulatory burdens to new markets emerging, one of them being a new cannabis industry that could bring billions of dollars in revenue that could be used to fund our roads. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are other states that have implemented policies to do this, and we need to look to other states. We need to see how they're doing it, but we need to do something that works and fits for Wisconsin and the culture of our state. So, I'm hoping that we don't need to raise the gas tax or do something like that, but we need to be realistic, and roads are something that everyone uses. They're
30
important.
seconds.
How you get to your job. It's how you get around. And if we have crumbling roads, that affects everyone. I think people are willing to pay a slightly increased gas tax if that means they're going to have roads that work, if it means you're not going to lose a tire on your way to work. So, hopefully we don't have to do that. But if our legislators aren't open to new ideas, creating new markets, then it's the only option we have.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we have scheduled closing statements here, 2 minutes each. Dan started our conversation earlier, so I'm going to go back to Aaron and let him have the first 2 minutes, his closing argument, so to speak. Aaron, it's your turn, first of all. 2 minutes on your closing statement.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, for hosting this. Thank you, John, and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting these and posing your questions. I really appreciate getting the chance to engage with Senator Fine and letting people know where we stand on the issues. What I would say is we have a few days before this election. So first, make sure to vote today or tomorrow. These are the last days of early in-person voting. Otherwise, make a plan to safely vote on November 3rd to make sure that your vote is counted. If you have requested an absentee ballot, please return it in person. Do not mail it back because they need to be back by the end of Tuesday when the polls close. They need to be back to be counted. Like I said, my name is Aaron Wojciechowski. I'm a hardworking person who got his start in local government, who appreciates nonpartisan government where we can work together and, fix the challenges and do what's best for our communities. That's the approach I took at the local level, and it's the approach that I'm hoping to take at the state level. I'm willing to work together, to make concessions, to find common ground, to bring in new ideas and new markets that are going to benefit our state. I want to invest in the programs that benefit our state, while expanding other access, to things like healthcare, improving our infrastructure, creating an economy that is fair and has fair taxes. And actually, these things that we're going to invest in, I truly do believe that if we're getting creative, if we're doing new things, we can lower the overall tax burden. I think it is possible. And, I might be running as a Democrat, and, my opponent can
30
say that
seconds.
Democrats don't support that. But I do, and I'm my own person, and I'm going to be fighting for you in the 18th district and for everyone in Wisconsin to make sure that you have the resources and the quality of life that you deserve. So I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd. If you'd like to learn more about me, some of the policies we weren't able to discuss, please go to my website, www.wojo4wisconsin.com, to learn more about my background and the issues I'm running on. So thank you again so much for being here, and make sure to vote.
Thank you, Aaron Wojciechowski, joining us here today. We've got time for Dan Fine, the incumbent. 2 minutes. Your closing argument, sir.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you to the Chamber from Oshkosh for hosting. Thanks to John Casper for all he does for the Chamber as well. As you've heard today, there are many clear policy differences between my opponent and myself. Over the past 4 years, I've worked hard to represent all of my constituents in the 18th Senate District, while we may not always agree. But I can guarantee you one thing: I've always listened to both sides of an issue, made the best decision based upon the facts. As I stated earlier, I've had 21 bills signed into law, both with Democrat and Republican votes. Another task that is not easy in Madison all the time. If you elect me again, I promise to continue to have an open door policy and to talk to as many of you as possible. I pride myself in excellent constituent services. When you vote for me on November 3rd or before, I continue to promise to work for you in the state Senate. I'm also proud of my many endorsements: the Dairy Business Association, the Grocers Association, the Tavern League of Wisconsin, Wisconsin Right to Life. I'm also very proud of the 3 sheriff endorsements from the district: Sheriff Dale Schmidt of Dodge County, Sheriff Ryan Waldschmidt of Fond du Lac County, and Sheriff John Motz of Winnebago County. And there's many, many more endorsements. You can check them out on my website, fineforsenate.com. I've lived in the district for 30 years now. This is where I've raised my family, got married, and enjoyed life. We see each other out at community events, farmers markets, football games, church, and many, many more places. This is the place I call home. After spending 30 years in the printing
30
business,
seconds.
I've decided to run for the state Senate, and it's been an honor to serve as your state senator. So I'm asking for your vote by absentee, in-person vote, absentee voting, which ends at the end of the day Friday. And I ask for your vote on November 3rd at your polling place as well. Thank you, and have a great day.
Gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate you taking time out this morning. And thanks to John at the Chamber of Commerce. We encourage everybody to vote either in person on Tuesday or, of course, by absentee or the early voting that continues here in Oshkosh until late tomorrow afternoon. We will be playing this back on News Talk Radio 1490 WOSH before Election Day. Thanks again, Dan. Thanks again, Aaron. Best of luck to both of you. And we'll see each other very, very soon. Take care.